Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to talk about my summer trip to Cairo, Egypt. I went in July, and that would be July of 2018, to Cairo for the purposes of improving my Arabic. And it was also my first time traveling outside the United States. I don't even know where to begin. There's, quite a lot I could say. This is going to be a slideshow. Mostly, I'm going to have some narration here and there. And it's going to be a lot of pictures. I do also have short videos mixed in with all of this that I took while I was there in Cairo. But I mainly took a lot of pictures. And it's not typically a good idea to bring a camera to Egypt because they will think you're a journalist, and I don't think the government looks too highly on journalists from foreign countries. So, all these pictures I basically took with my cell phone. So I guess I should just start from the beginning of the trip, and that would be the flight. I took Royal Jordanian Airlines to Amman, Jordan, and then from Amman, Jordan to Cairo. And the flight there was really long. I think it was like 14 hours. And that's obviously the longest flight I've ever been on. And that was a pretty brutal experience. I'm a pretty light sleeper, so I definitely was not able to sleep at all during the whole entire flight. At least they had like these TV things built into the seats so you could try to watch something. And I would also try to read. I'm an avid reader, as any academic should be. And yeah, it was pretty top of the line, I guess you'd say, airlines or flight experience, but such a long flight like that's really difficult. And I'm pretty sure I was the only white guy on the whole flight. Everyone else was like Arab, so I definitely stood out like a sore thumb, even though I can speak some Arabic. At that point I definitely didn't know much about Arabic dialects, not as much as I do now anyways. So yeah, I tried to dress the best that I could. I feel like dressing your best makes it quite a lot easier to get through, airport security without any issues. And all the people in the airport and all the flight attendants and all that seem to, treat you better. That's just a fact of life. It was really cool though. I remember we flew over Israel and Palestine, and seeing the barren desert. That was the first time I've really ever seen a desert in my life. It was quite the experience. And then when we landed in Amman, I just was staring at the desert the whole time from the airport windows. I thought it was really cool. And definitely when I got to Amman, it was like a very different feel in the airport. Now all of a sudden I'm seeing people with big robes and big beards walking around all over, and women who are fully veiled with niqab and different things, which for a Western Muslim to see in an airport is a little bit jarring. But because if we did that in America, I think we'd be quite heavily discriminated against. So that was kind of different. And then we got in a small plane to go to Cairo, and it was a pretty quick flight. And I remember both flights I couldn't eat any of the food because I'm allergic to gluten. And of course, I guess being Arab flights, Royal Jordanian or whatever, pretty much everything they had was bread. So I was starved the whole time. And when I landed in Amman, I didn't have that much time to catch my next flight to go to Cairo. So I didn't have time to stop and get food. And they didn't really have a lot of food stands in the airport there. And I remember when I landed in Cairo, I got off the airplane. Everything seemed like a normal airport experience, like in America. And then when I went in the bathroom, I quickly realized I'm definitely in the Middle East. The bathroom was definitely not up to Western standards. I'll just leave it at that. And there was a strange little man in the bathroom. I guess the bathroom attendant, you might say. So yeah, that was a little different. And he led me to what stall I was supposed to go to, and shut the door and locked it for me, which was kind of different. I wasn't quite used to that. And he guarded my bags while I was in the bathroom. So yeah, all that was really different for me. I think he might have expected a tip afterwards, but I was a foreigner who didn't know anything. So in hindsight, I probably should have tried to give him money or something. Of course, at that time, I didn't have any Egyptian pounds. I hadn't exchanged my currency yet. I remember, going out of the bathroom. So, having exited from the bathroom, I had to navigate my way around the airport halls and try to figure out how to get to baggage claim. That was what was on my mind, because I had a carry-on suitcase with me, and I had also a checked large bag or suitcase that had a lot of stuff in it too. So I was trying to get to baggage claim. I had to go down a floor, and then I got to this giant hallway or corridor. I mean, it was giant. It was the size of a gymnasium, and it had these big huge English signs that said, if you don't have a visa, go down this way. Well, I had already gotten my visa from the Chicago Egyptian consulate, so I didn't know what to do. There was no sign that says, well, if you already have your visa, go this way. So here I am, sticking out like a sore thumb. I was wearing a 3-piece suit. I had an actual suitcase. Most of the people there had all their luggage or all their clothes and stuff in plastic shopping bags, and a lot of the women were balancing their luggage or their shopping bags on top of their heads and waiting in line and walking around. And so I definitely stood out. And so I just jumped in a random line and just kind of hoped for the best. I just jumped in the line that had the most people, because I figured that's probably where I belong. And so they were clearly all Egyptians. And I stuck out, so people started asking me questions, other people waiting in the line. And they're like, so where are you from? Min ayna anta Saudi? Are you from Saudi Arabia? And I'm like, no, I'm American. And then their eyes would get really big, and they're like, oh, welcome to Egypt, and different things. They were very surprised that, they're meeting an American, which was interesting. I'm pretty sure a lot of Americans go to Egypt for vacation, but I guess not that many Egyptians ever meet an American. I can't really say. So I waited in line for a very long time, and then I finally got up to what I assume was some sort of customs agent or something. And I was speaking Arabic to him, and once he saw my passport, which was American, he started speaking English to me. And I don't even remember what he asked me. It was only 1 or 2 questions, where are you going and what are you doing? And then he stamped my visa or whatever. And then there was probably 4 huge lines, and probably 4 or 5 of these kiosks, each one having a customs agent in it or whatever. But then when you exit, it's like one tiny hole to get from that corridor into the baggage claim area. And so it's just a huge bottleneck. And it took forever to get out of that because everyone's pushing and shoving each other to get through. And there's another agent there at like the bottleneck who's checking everyone's passport to make sure they have a stamp or something, I'm assuming. And so I get through there, and I get my bag from the baggage claim, and I guess because I have real luggage and big luggage, everybody thinks I'm rich, not to mention I'm wearing a 3-piece suit. And so everybody is like offering to carry my luggage, which I assumed was for money. So I told everybody, no, I'm fine. I got it. And I got to the, what was clearly like the security area. But there was nobody there. Like none of the machines were on or working. So you just walk on through. And so I thought that was kind of different. Just walked on through, and then I got to the other side, and I was trying to find places to like exchange my money. But this was 9 p.m. or maybe it was later than that, like 10 p.m. in Egypt. So like none of the banks or currency exchange places were open. But they had like these huge, giant like ATM machines that looked like currency exchange machines. When I tried to use any of them, they didn't work, so I wasn't able to exchange my currency right away, which was very frustrating. And the school that I was going to, it's called Al-Arabeya. They have it organized so like a driver picks you up from the airport. And so there was somebody there like waiting with a sign that had my name on it. And then there was a student with the driver who was from Italy. And so we got in the car and we're driving. And one of the things I remember pretty vividly is like seeing all these billboards for I think his name's Mohammed Saleh, who's like a famous Egyptian soccer player. So I was like, okay, I'm definitely in Egypt. But one of the shocking things too is like right when I stepped out of the airport, just like massive heat, and then the smell. Cairo is considered one of the most polluted cities on Earth, so it definitely had this distinct smell, which I can only describe as it just smelled like car exhaust. So yeah, it was kind of a lot of different sensations, and I was thoroughly exhausted too, barely able to stay awake. My body was just super tired, and I remember the driver drove really fast, nothing unsafe, but he's driving quite fast, like we're on some highways and stuff. And then we get to what looks like a dark alleyway, and he's like, oh, here's the place you're staying, here's your apartment or whatever. And I had gotten lodging through the school, and paid extra to have my own private room to myself versus having a roommate. And so he called somebody up in the apartment. Some people came down and helped carry my bags up the stairs, because it's like it was like a tall high-rise apartment, and there's no elevators, and I have a back disability, so I'm really glad they had someone help me, because I physically would have been unable to get my bags up 8 flights of stairs or whatever it was. I'm pretty sure it was 8 flights, and it was like a spiral staircase type thing too, so it was definitely a bit harder than anything in America. And all the roommates there were English speaking. There was one guy from the United States, 2 people from Britain, I think, and so I remember they shared some water with me and some food with me right away. And that was quite nice of them. And they borrowed me some money because I wasn't able to exchange my money. And I pretty much kind of unpacked all my stuff. And you can see, my room with 2 beds there, and me kind of unpacking my stuff. And then I just basically, more or less went to bed because I was so tired. And I woke up that morning. Another student, he took me to go get breakfast at a street cart. So we had fool, batatas, and ta'amaya and bitingan. So fool is like a bean dish that's really popular in most Arab countries. I've eaten it before in America at like Arab restaurants. And, batatas is just like French fries basically, but in Egypt, I think they taste way better. They make them different. Ta'amaya is basically like falafel, but there they make it from fava beans instead of from chickpeas like in the Levant. And then bitingan is like an eggplant type dish. Bitingan literally means eggplant, but the way they make it there is kind of different. And then I started my first day of school. And I was doing a program. It was like a 1-month intensive where I did 120 hours in 1 month, which is basically 6 hours a day of Arabic. So I would do like some modern standard Arabic. I would mostly focus on classical Arabic because that is conducive to the research that I'm doing, in graduate school. I'm researching early Islamic legal epistemologies, basically like early usul fiqh, you might say. But this is before, this is the early time before the term usul fiqh was really in vogue. And so most of my, readings were quite classical to prepare me for that. And then I did some tajweed also at the center, and some 1 hour of Arabeya or Egyptian dialect every day, just so I'd be able to survive the month that I'm there. And I found out that dialect actually helped improve my standard Arabic, my Fusha, and classical Arabic, quite a lot. It's I think really beneficial to anybody who wants to learn Arabic to learn both a dialect and the standard. But of course, I would recommend getting a foundation in standard Arabic, a firm foundation, before starting to learn a dialect. And there's many reasons for that. Too long that I can't get into here. But yeah, so my first day, of school, I don't really remember much because I was extremely jet lagged. Like, Egypt has pretty much the opposite schedule, like, that I had in America. So it was like, I was literally awake when I'm used to sleeping. So it took me like literally 1 week to kind of get adjusted to the sleep schedule. So the first whole week I was super jet lagged and super tired. The Europeans, they don't really have that problem because the time zone difference isn't very much for them. But the neighborhood was a really cool neighborhood. The school was only 2 blocks away from where I was staying, like the actual apartment building. The neighborhood is called Muhandisin. It was built somewhere around like the 1950s or 1960s, so it's fairly new. And Muhandisin literally means engineers. So it's kind of like, I guess you'd say, like a more of a bougie, upper middle class type neighborhood for Egypt. A little bit fancier than other neighborhoods. It had a very small town feel, the area I was at. Within a couple days, I got to know most of my neighbors, just talking to people on the street, because I already knew some Arabic, obviously before going to Egypt. I was just there mostly to improve classical Arabic, and also, my conversation skills weren't the best, so I wanted to improve on that too. So yeah, I got to know a lot of people in the neighborhood, right away, because like Egyptians, it seems like when they're done with their work day, they don't go home and like watch TV like Americans might do, but they sit outside and they're very social and they talk, and they might go sit at the cafe, or they might, just go outside and sit outside and hang out. And there was street food. There was just stands where they would sell like tea. They had like these corner stores that are just out in the open everywhere. So they literally would have like soda coolers that are on the street and tables on the street where they're just like selling like convenience items, like what we would consider like a 7-Eleven in America or something. And so you get to know all the store owners in your neighborhood fairly quickly. I think it was like the first or second day my roommate showed me where like the different supermarkets were in my neighborhood. And yeah, I really, really love the neighborhood, and I really miss it. Food in Egypt is definitely really different than in America. I think in America we have too much industrial processing that happens with our food. There's too much chemicals on the food, too much genetic modifying that's going on, too many hormones put into the animals to make them grow meat, and all these things that are just basically, I guess you'd say, unnatural. So I remember in Egypt, all the food was extremely flavorful. Like, I wanted to eat so many fruit and vegetables that I normally wouldn't eat in America because I didn't like them. But in Egypt, I really wanted to eat them because they were extremely delicious and extremely flavorful. And all their food was really good. And, I mean, even their snack foods like chips and different things, they have this brand called Shibs. That, it was all really quite good and much more. There's much more flavor, like richness in the flavor. Like I remember, eating beef there, you actually like taste the blood, you taste the iron. It's a whole totally different experience, and it's a much better experience. And some of my favorite food was not actually Egyptian food, but was the Yemeni and the Syrian restaurants there. That was probably the best food in Cairo. And so I ate a lot of that. And as a group, sometimes the students, we would go as a group from this Arabic center all together and, try different restaurants together. And, a big staple in Egypt for us also was Uber Eats, which is like the Uber company that is like a taxi service. They deliver food in Egypt. And they also have this app there called Otlob, which means like ordering or order. Comes from the word talib, like student, literally means seeker. So Otlob is like seeking something, and it's a imperative, it's a command. So when you're saying Otlob, it's like saying like, get this for me maybe. And so, we'd order stuff with that and get it delivered right to our apartment. Probably the worst food I had in Egypt was Indian food. They didn't seem like they knew how to cook Indian food. And, living in Chicago, I'm used to some pretty good Indian food. But yeah, that was definitely not the case in Egypt.